I'm 73 years old, and people ask me all the time if I'm lonely, if I don't want someone, if I miss companionship, like being alone at this age is some kind of problem that needs fixing. So after hearing it enough times, I started wondering if maybe they were right. And at 70, I got a boyfriend, and everyone around me acted like I'd just won something, like I should be grateful, like this was proof I was still doing life the right way. But what nobody tells you is how lonely you can feel when you're not actually alone. Because I was lonelier with him than I ever was by myself. And this all started after my husband passed away at 68. Cancer, 6 months from diagnosis to goodbye. Fast and cruel. And those first 2 years afterward were hard. I won't lie, the house felt too big, too quiet. Sundays were the worst because we used to make breakfast together, read the paper, just sit there and be. And without him, Sundays felt like a punishment. But slowly, I found my rhythm again. I joined a woodworking class at the community center, started having coffee with a few ladies from church on Tuesdays, taught myself how to cook more than scrambled eggs, and I built a routine that worked for me, not the life I planned, but a life that felt like mine. Then my daughter started worrying. Friends started pushing, people saying I needed to meet someone, that I was too young to give up, too young at 70. And after hearing that over and over, I started doubting myself, wondering if something was wrong with me. Maybe I was scared, maybe I was hiding. So I joined a dating website. It took me days just to upload a photo and weeks to write a profile. But when the messages started coming in, I felt wanted again, and that feeling can be dangerous when you haven't felt it in a while. That's how I met Larry. Widower. Nice smile. Good talker. Seemed genuinely interested in my life. After a couple of months, we met for coffee. It felt easy, comfortable, promising. The first few months were fine. Dinners once or twice a week. Matinee movies because they're cheaper and quieter. Walks when the weather was nice. And I remember thinking maybe everyone was right. Maybe I was better off with someone. But then the little things started creeping in. Phone calls in the morning, at lunch, before bed. Sweet at first, then heavy. If I didn't answer right away, there were texts, worry, questions, explanations I didn't ask for. 1 hour with friends felt like something I had to justify. Weekends always needed plans, always needed togetherness. And if I wanted a quiet day at home, it somehow meant I didn't care enough. So I started saying yes when I really wanted to say no, because at this age, people expect gratitude, like companionship is a favor you don't question. And about 6 months in, I noticed my shoulders tightening every time his name showed up on my phone. Not excitement, just tension. One night, he called late while I was already in bed with a book, and we talked for nearly 2 hours about nothing urgent. Just his day, his worries, his fears. And when I hung up, I felt exhausted in a way sleep couldn't fix. The next morning, a friend invited me fishing, something I love because it's quiet. But I said no, because I knew if Larry came, it wouldn't be peaceful. And that night, sitting alone in my house, I realized my life wasn't mine anymore. Every decision ran through someone else's emotions first, not because I wanted it that way, but because I was afraid of disappointing him, afraid of seeming selfish. And then there was the money. I live on Social Security and a small pension. I'm careful, comfortable but cautious. And with him came dinners, gas, gifts, trips I couldn't afford, and I never said no, because saying no felt cold, unloving. And at night, I lay awake, doing math in my head, watching my savings shrink. And my energy was disappearing too. At 73, I don't have endless energy. My body decides for me when I need rest. But he didn't understand that. He compared me to other people, made it seem like I wasn't trying hard enough. And the breaking point came when he started talking about moving in together, not gently, not as a question, just assuming. And I felt panic, real panic, not excitement. And that's when I knew I had to end it. The breakup was messy. There were tears, anger, guilt. And for a while I wondered if I'd made a mistake, but slowly, Something shifted. I woke up one morning and my first thought wasn't about calling someone or checking in. It was simply, what do I want to do today? And that's when I understood the difference between being alone and being lonely, because with him I was never alone, but I was lonely in a deeper way. Lonely because I couldn't be myself, couldn't live at my own pace, couldn't honor what my body and mind needed. And now I wake up, make my coffee exactly how I like it, strong with a little cream, and live my days on my terms. And no, I'm not lonely. I'm peaceful, and at this age, peace isn't a luxury, it's survival, and that's something nobody tells you until you learn it the hard way. After I ended that relationship, people expected me to fall apart, like I'd made some tragic mistake, like I'd chosen isolation over love. And for a while, I almost believed them, because the guilt sticks with you longer than the relief. It whispers at night. It asks if you were too picky, too selfish, too set in your ways. And I won't lie. Those first few weeks were uncomfortable, not because I missed him, but because I was detoxing from constantly thinking about someone else's needs. I'd reach for my phone out of habit, then stop, realizing there was no one I needed to check in with, no one waiting for a response. And that silence felt strange at first, almost loud. My daughter asked questions. My friends shook their heads. One even said I was going to regret it. And maybe years ago that would have scared me into trying again. But something in me had shifted. I started noticing how my body felt lighter, how my chest didn't feel tight anymore, how I could breathe without bracing myself for the next call or request. I began sleeping better, not perfect, but deeper, and that matters at this age. My blood pressure settled. My appetite came back. I had energy for things I loved again. I went fishing with Jane. And we barely spoke, just sat there, with the water moving slowly in front of us. And I remember thinking, this is peace. This is what I almost traded away, because I was afraid of being alone. And that fear runs deep, deeper than loneliness, because loneliness is a feeling that comes and goes, but fear is what keeps you stuck in situations that drain you. Fear of judgment, fear of pity, fear of being seen as incomplete, especially when you're older, because society has this quiet rule that says if you're alone past a certain age, something must be wrong with you. And I bought into that for a while. I really did. I thought having a boyfriend would prove I was still desirable, still relevant, still normal. But what I learned is that needing proof like that is a trap. Because the moment you let someone else validate your worth, you hand them power over your peace. And peace is fragile at this stage of life. Our bodies don't bounce back like they used to. Stress sits heavier. Exhaustion lingers longer. Emotional labor costs more than people realize, and nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about how managing someone else's expectations every single day can wear you down faster than being alone ever could. I watched friends stay in relationships that made them miserable just because they didn't want to start over. One friend told me she couldn't remember the last time she had a full day to herself, and she said it like a joke, but her eyes didn't laugh, and I thought, that's not love, that's survival mode, that's fear dressed up as commitment. And I promised myself I wouldn't do that again. I wouldn't shrink my world just to make room for someone else's comfort. I wouldn't apologize for needing quiet or rest or space, because at 73, I've earned the right to live gently, to wake up without pressure, to drink my coffee slowly, to change my plans without explanation. And yes, there are moments when I feel a little ache. Holidays can be hard. Certain songs can still knock the wind out of me. Sometimes I miss my husband so deeply it feels physical, but that kind of pain is honest. It passes. It doesn't erode who I am. It doesn't ask me to disappear. And that's the difference, because the loneliness I felt in that relationship was heavier. It made me smaller, quieter, less myself. And I think that's the part people don't understand. Being alone doesn't mean you're lonely. And being with someone doesn't mean you're fulfilled. Fulfillment comes from living in alignment with who you are and what your body and heart can handle. And right now, what I can handle is peace. Simple days, familiar routines, meaningful friendships, and the freedom to choose myself without guilt. I don't need to perform happiness for anyone. I don't need to prove I'm still lovable. I already know my worth, and that knowledge came late, but better late than never. If you're listening to this and you're older and feeling pressured to find someone just to ease other people's discomfort with your independence, pause. Ask yourself whose fear you're really responding to, yours or theirs, because choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's honest. And honesty at this age is priceless. You've already spent decades compromising, adjusting, explaining, giving, loving. Now it's okay to rest. It's okay to say no. It's okay to live a life that looks quiet from the outside, but feels rich on the inside. I didn't fail at love. I graduated from it. I learned that my own company is enough, that peace is more valuable than companionship that comes with chaos, and that the greatest freedom I've found in these later years is waking up every morning knowing the day belongs to me, fully, completely, without apology. And that, more than anything, is what happiness looks like now.